Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Noah and I wanted to welcome all of you to another installment of Monologue Monday here on my YouTube channel. Monologue Monday. If you are a returning viewer to this series on my YouTube channel, I want to thank you so much for tuning back in, and as always, I hope you can take something away from this video as well. With all of that being said, let's get into this installment of Monologue Monday. So for this episode of Monologue Monday, I wanted to hopefully briefly discuss my personal opinions on what the future might look like for technology, right? Social media, people spending a lot of time on their phones, people spending a lot of time from each day on their computer, ads being pushed to us, and all of that stuff. I lumped all of it into one basket for the example that I was kind of thinking about for this episode of Monologue Monday, but I wanted to brainstorm what might be a possibility for how the dynamic is going to be when I'm, 50, when I'm 60, and so on. In my personal opinion, something that I hope is the case, it's not only my opinion, but it's my desire as well, is that something that I've noticed, especially within the last probably 3 years or so, maybe that's a trend ever since I started working from home, but the exposure, the stimuli, constant stimuli, the reliance, like I mentioned in the introduction of this video, on our technology, right, on our phones, feels like it goes up every single year. Every single year it feels like there's more stimuli coming in, there's more ads, there's more apps, there's more, it's just more and more and more, kind of forcing us to spend more and more time on our devices, right? And this can be due to a few reasons. I think there's obviously the aspect of the companies trying to gear their apps and their platforms and stuff like that towards kind of a consumer addiction, right? Because these companies are some of them make quite a bit of money through ad revenue. And how do you sell ads? You put someone's face in front of them, right? You don't get paid if you put an ad in outer space somewhere. No one's going to look at it. But for us right now, there is an incentive for companies to make us addicted, reliant on some of these platforms, so we continue to consume ads, continue to stay on their app, continue to spend a lot of time scrolling around through their app, and so on. And I think there's a few other examples. I'm not going to get into all of them, but overall I feel like the reliance on technology, right, that's probably the easiest way to put it, is just becoming more and more weighted, more and more prevalent every single year. And it got to the point for me where I wanted to think about if it would ever be the case where we would almost go back to how things were before we had all of this mass communication, before we had, cell phones and all these apps and people posting pictures and stories and ads being thrown in front of our face left and right, kind of back to maybe like the 70s or the 80s or something like that, where certainly there were the introduction of, phones and so on, but it was not nearly what it is right now. And one of the reasons I kind of thought about if this would be a possibility, not only because I actually, this is actually something that I desire in my own personal life, which I'll kind of get into later, is that similar to, I think, fashion, there's different trends amongst individuals that at one point were very, very popular, right? But then in a certain amount of time completely went out of style, right? People hated it. People didn't like it. People were made fun of for, wearing certain clothes or, using a certain product or driving a certain car or something like that. And then in some time, those things that people were made fun of become the cool things, right? Meaning if you don't have one of those, if you don't have that car, if you don't have this kind of clothes, now you're out of style. And I almost feel like this might be the case with technology as well, where for one reason or another, I think individuals there is going to be somewhat of a breaking point where the stimuli that all of this technology and these ads and, this kind of this addictive relationship that we have with technology is going to get to a threshold. Like everything does have a threshold. It's going to get to a threshold, and people are going to realize that maybe I don't need to have it, right? Maybe I don't need to be on it this many hours at least, or the ultimate position, at least in my opinion, would be to almost completely leave them behind, right, and kind of move back to a dynamic where you're actually talking to people in person. You're writing letters to people, you're going to see them rather than looking at their social media to see kind of what they've been up to. And maybe that will become what's trendy, right? Maybe people will start noticing maybe there's health benefits, mental health benefits, and maybe even physical health benefits that are linked to stepping away from technology, and that's ultimately going to be what's in style, right? In 50 years, technology maybe, for the most part, except for huge, large-scale, endeavors by companies and so on, maybe that'll get kind of left behind, in turn for a less stimuli-oriented kind of a lifestyle, right? Something that's more closely related to how things were, 30 years ago now in 2024, more of a simple lifestyle that people previously had. One of the main reasons that I mentioned that I hope that this is the case is because I'm already, at 28 years old, I am already at the point where I am noticing this, sort of an unhealthy relationship that I have with certain aspects of technology where they do consume too much of my time. And in the last year or so, I've really a few things have happened in my life where I've realized the importance of time. I've realized the importance of making as many minutes as you can throughout the day actually matter. And it just so happens that a lot of stuff that we consume, on our phones and so on, don't really matter, right? There's certain people, right, that maybe do business on their phones. Not a lot, right? That's not a common thing. I think the vast majority, over 95% of time that we spent kind of playing around those doesn't really add too much value to our life, like talking with people, right? Like learning about the world, like working on your artistic abilities, right? Humans are creative, right? And being creative can stimulate different parts of your mind and so on. I don't think it has the same, they're not weighted equally, right? So a lot of the time that we spend on our phones really just kind of goes into the abyss, right? It doesn't actually matter. And the last point that I kind of want to loop into this conversation is that a few weeks ago when I was overseas in Japan for about a month, I really stepped away from this, right? I was still making videos, right? But I was kind of actually working on more so my artistic ability and my creativity that way by, recording, capturing events and then editing them, so I think it's a little bit different. But I really stepped away from the generic social media, right? Checking in on friends via Instagram or Facebook or, that kind of social media. You guys know what I mean. I stepped away. I stepped away from hours on my phone. My reports that they give you about how much screen time you have and everything were down by like 70%, 80%, because I was so in tune with, what was happening around me when I was in Japan, spending time with family and just being kind of, like I said, I had other things going on, being with my own thoughts, that I really didn't want to pick up my phone again. And I knew I would have to, right? Because coming back to the States, I was going to start working again. And, I get Teams messages, I get emails on my phone, and you kind of get looped back into that cycle, right? That cycle of, spending a lot of time looking at that kind of stuff. And I was dreading it, if I'm being honest. And this was a really big point for me where I had this kind of idea of, what are things going to be like? There's no way that I would ever want to keep spending more time on these devices and, getting more kind of addicted, right, to these applications and all of these different things. So I had the idea that, well, in some time, right, in some years, maybe it will go backwards in time. Maybe we will all, or a good part of us, will step away, right? Maybe we'll go back to landline, right? So if you're not home and someone needs to reach you, they got to wait until you get home. You're on your own time. I don't know. It was just an interesting concept, interesting opinion that I thought I had that I wanted to share on this episode of Monologue Monday. But of course, I want to hear from you guys as well. Do you have anything to add to my opinions here and some of my predictions for what our relationship with technology might be in the upcoming decades? Please let me know in the comment section below. I would love to hear your thoughts. And of course, as always, if you've stuck along this far in the video, I want to thank you so much for your time today, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.